Hello and welcome to another episode of Back to the Burgh, presented by the PodHub Network. My guest today is from the neighborhood of Hazelwood in Pittsburgh, and when he's not preaching the word of the Lord to the young adults of Pittsburgh, he's one half of the 412 Sports Talk podcast. Please welcome Eddie Provident. I almost messed up your first name. Sorry about that.
Right,
I usually
man.
mess up the last names of people.
That's all good, buddy. It's good to be here, Cody.
Yeah, man. Hey, I'm glad we got you on. What you and Chad have been doing is like phenomenal. I mean, you guys have it seems like you skyrocketed through the ranks of Pittsburgh podcasts.
So this is actually the second podcast that I tried to, I hosted. The first one was actually, I had a friend from Duquesne. His name's Matt Casnell. He's from Philadelphia.
Okay.
We had the Keystone Coast to Coast podcast, and I don't think that anybody other than like his family and my family listened to it. We actually had Chad on like one of our last episodes, and that was the last time the Penguins and Flyers played in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so after that, like when that quit, or when like we ended that, Chad asked me if I had any interest in getting back into it because he wanted to get back into it. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Chad, he was, I think it was Penn's Initiative or Penn's Blog. One of them, he actually it was credentialed media with them, and had all kinds of, connections in the business already. And so I don't want to say I rode off his coattails, but like he had already laid the groundwork, 6 or 7 years ago, and we just kind of like picked up where he left off back then. And so it took a little bit of time, but like, I mean, like the first 3 or 4 episodes, I think it was Chris Carter, Jesse Marshall, Bob Pompiani, Mayor Peduto were our first 4 interviews. And it was like, how I'm sitting in my dining room interviewing Mayor Peduto, trying to figure out the phone setup that I can record an interview with the mayor of Pittsburgh. I'm like, how am I here right now? So, Chad really did a lot of it. And kind of how it works is I do a lot of the like editing. I do most of the editing and most of the uploading and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of I always joke on the show, I just wind Chad up and let him do his thing. I think Chad's kind of the one that he's the straw that stirs the drink. So I sit in the driver's seat and make sure the plane doesn't crash.
Yeah, I mean, you guys really do seem like it's just a perfect storm. You guys just if it like you guys just came together and bang, there it is. Like you guys have, like you said, you had great guests.
Which is funny because I've never fought a hockey teammate. Chad and I met over playing deck hockey, except for I almost fought Chad up at Penn Hills deck hockey. We were playing. Our goalie didn't show up, and I had goalie equipment in my trunk. But I never really played goalie other than like some street hockey. So I said, I'll hop in. I'm not promising that. I let up like 11 goals. I mean, it was worse than Tristan Jarry. We'll put it that way. And, and, Chad and I had words after the game, but I mean, so I'm not shocked that the chemistry's there. I think it was just, out of all of the guys that I hung out with back then, I wouldn't have anticipated it being Chad, but I'm glad it is because, it's working out. And I have a lot of fun with him, and he's a good dude. He's grown up a lot, and I'm sure I hope I've grown up a lot. But yeah, Absolutely. It's a lot of fun.
Hey, that's what we're going to get into. So we're going to backtrack a little bit. We'll get back to all that, of course. But let's talk about growing up in Hazelwood. You were telling me before,
oh man,
family's a great story that you want to write a book about. But just give us a little bit of what that was like.
So obviously I'm a pastor. I grew up in the church. Neither of my parents grew up in the church. Actually, my mom's family still owns a bar in Hazelwood called the Lido Cafe. And so, she grew up in a bar. And so when back in the 70s and 80s, when things were booming, we had the steel mill in Hazelwood. We had the railroad going in Hazelwood. So they were making money hand over fist. My grandpap was, they were taking trips to Aruba, taking trips to Vegas, hanging out with all the people down there. My dad's family was a railroad family, and they were kind of like, the blue collar, work hard kind of thing. I had a teacher in high school whose dad was from Hazelwood, and so he worked in the railroad yard, and he didn't actually know my family, directly. But I remember her saying, "Yeah, I talked to my dad about the Provident family," and she was like, "All he said was, I just knew not to mess with them." And they were an old, that old school Italian family that stuck together. I had uncles that ran numbers for the mafia. I've got, I was strictly forbidden about one or two of my great uncles and cousins that talking about anything that I heard. So, they're long gone now. But yeah, I mean, it was that perfect mix of like the hood and all that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, my parents got into the church probably in their mid to late 20s. So they brought my sister, my brother, and I all up in the church. So we had one half of our childhood in a church, and then the other half of the childhood was in a bar and on the street. Yeah, on the streets in one of the rougher neighborhoods in the city. So,
and you know what? I feel like that's how it should be.
I would, dude. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And like I live in Monroeville now. My wife's family's from Monroeville, and we moved into her grandmother's old house, and it's peaceful. Like obviously, I'm outside right now because it's quieter outside than it is in my house with my dog and my cat running around.
Yeah.
And with my basement kind of, I'm trying to redo some things down there. So my normal setup isn't available right now. But I mean, I miss being down there. Like I still go down, I try to get down there, a couple of times a week. We just played poker Saturday night. A handful of us, we closed my grandma's bar down, and when she closed, and played a couple of hands of Texas Hold'em together. So it's all cousins and friends.
Yeah.
But it's a good time, man. Like I miss, growing up running around with all the kids on the from the neighborhood. Unfortunately, I know a lot of dudes that are no longer here because of drugs and gang stuff. But yeah, I mean, I had a blast growing up, and my family was always into something. We always had something going on, and tons of characters. I don't, it's one of those neighborhoods no one knows your first name. They only know your nickname, unless you're like me, who my dad was one of the ones giving out the nicknames, so I didn't have one because he didn't have one. But yeah, we've got Face, Bananas, Oi Choi, all the guys out there from Hazelwood. So my uncle was one of my favorites. My uncle was Wacko. So but yeah.
So you were telling me beforehand that you're a bit of a scrapper when you were young. You like to get into fights. What was that all about?
So, all right. So as far, because my friends from Hazel are going to see this and they're going to call BS, because as far as the Hazelwood goes, I was probably one of the least toughest guys in my friend circle. I've generally avoided any kind of fights or anything like that while I was in Hazelwood. But I got into a lot of fights in middle school because I went to a school in Point Breeze, and I was kind of the kid from the wrong side of town. He got picked on a lot. And so my dad was one of the tough guys in the neighborhood when he grew up, and he explicitly told my mom that his son wasn't going to be a wuss. And he's since apologized about that kind of parenting, and I think he understands that comes with its negatives. But if I got picked on, man, like, and I came home and talked about it, it was like, all right, well, what are you doing about it? Like, either quit hanging out with them or do something about it. So, I mean, I remember there was one time I was back when I was smart in middle school. I went to the gifted center, like one day a week. And this kid from the gifted center kept messing with, every week we'd be there. He'd mess with me and mess with me and mess with me. And so him and his buddies would hang out on this one side of the recess park, like the recess area where like none of the teachers were.
Yeah.
And so, I was over by that side one time, and he's going and going and going. And I just walked up to him and sucker punched him and then walked away. Like that was it. I was over and done with. None of the teachers saw it. Never messed with me ever since. But my parents made the executive decision that because of how bad the high schools that I would have gone to were, it would have either been Brashear or Alderdice. And at the time, you had all of the stuff going down between Homewood and Hazelwood and the Hill and Hazelwood. And I'm not talking just fighting and stuff like that. Like dudes that I grew up with were, getting shot once a month. And so between the fighting and like the stupid stuff, because I was trying to defend myself a lot of the times, and then all of the other stuff with the gang violence that was going on in the neighborhood. My parents just didn't want myself, my sister, or my brother in that. And so, you know, they enrolled us in the City Charter High School. It was in downtown Pittsburgh. And at the time I hated it. Like, I wanted to be with my friends. I wanted to go to Alderdice, and I probably would have been, I think Chris Carter graduated 07. So Chris Carter and I would have been classmates if I would have gone to Alderdice. Yeah. But I think looking back on it, it was probably a good decision for me because I wasn't a tough kid, and I could be a tough kid in a classical academy in middle school, but going into a city school where, I probably would have gotten torn to shreds. And so I think my parents knew that, and they made a wise decision. So,
yeah. So, I mean, obviously you go to the charter school, and you don't want to be there, but like, what do you think you learned going there versus if you would have gone the public school route? Like, obviously you have like, less fighting, less this, less that, less drama, basically.
So that's, no, go ahead.
I was just saying, but like, what else outside of like the physical did you learn from that experience?
Well, so by about 10th grade, this charter school was very technology oriented. Mm-hmm. They gave every student a laptop to bring home, and it was your laptop. Like, that was, so I got into technology, and my dad, like, when he left the railroad yard, he got into IT as well. Like, he took a couple of certification classes, and got a job with UPMC with children's as a help desk guy. That eventually turned into like a manager's position for him. But I got into IT pretty quick because it was just because what my dad did. And, my dad's my best friend. Like, him and I are about as tight as a father and son can get. And so I got into that just because it was something that we would do together. But then City High offered electives for students, and one of them was a digital music elective. And I played guitar in high school. And when I got into that digital music elective, it opened up a whole new world to me, because I'd never messed with anything like that. Like, we were making, in 11th grade, I was learning how to make beats on Reason and like all these different audio programs. And then that spiraled into Photoshop and, a little bit of Premiere back then, and like learning how to do audio video stuff. And that ended up being my degree at Duquesne, was in digital media, multimedia development. And it was because I found this whole new world of like, I could use all this computer knowledge I have and then mix it with my music and all this other stuff. And it just kind of like, it took over, like that's all I wanted to do. And if I wouldn't have gone to City High, I don't think I'd have found that. So like I said, I'm glad that it happened. And I always joke that I'm like peaked in high school Rob Lowe. But I had so much fun my last 2 years of City High that, like, I wouldn't have changed it for anything. Like, I loved that school. I loved the teachers I had. And what it did for me, for my confidence and seeing like what I can do with the multimedia stuff, it was great.
Yeah. So you mentioned you went to Duquesne. Did you have any big projects that you did there? Obviously you were trying to do something with music.
Dude, Duquesne was a monumental mess. I'm gonna move into some light here because it's starting to get dark. But yeah, Duquesne was a mess, man. I had all these great intentions of graduating and getting into some kind of multimedia business or something like that. I wanted to get into video production or audio production. So for starters, I originally went in thinking that I was going to be an audio engineering student.
Yeah.
The recording arts program at Duquesne requires you to be either jazz or classically trained in whatever instrument that you play
before you even get in there.
Yeah.
That's
there was a whole interview process. I had to do I had to sit in front of, you remember Handyman Joe Negri from Mr. Rogers?
Oh, yes.
Handyman Negri.
Yes.
So he taught jazz guitar at Duquesne, and I had to do an audition, and I happened to do this audition in front of Handyman Negri. And so like Joe Negri's like a Pittsburgh legend. And I'm sitting there completely self-taught. Like, God bless my music teacher in high school, Mr. Sable. He did everything that he could to try to like cram in like years of knowledge into like a little 2 or 3 months like time frame. But it was not, so I go into this not realizing that I have to be jazz or classically trained. I'm like, it just says 2 pieces, like a finger picked piece and whatever a piece of your choosing. And so I didn't know that the audition was like a business casual setup. So like I showed up in a Hurley hoodie, a beanie, and some etnies and some ripped jeans. Yeah, like right. So I walk in, I sit down, and I'm sitting face to face with Joe Negri, and he's like, "All right, what are you gonna play?" And I was like, I'm gonna play some Jimi Hendrix for you. And dude,
that's great.
I have watched Joe Negri on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood my entire childhood. And this poor man is like trying his best not to laugh at me. And he's like, yeah, he's like, you definitely know how to play guitar. I just don't know that you are jazz or classically trained. And I just at that point was like, I'm not, man. Like I'm in way over my, like, I'm in way over my head, man. So I obviously didn't get into the music school at Duquesne. So I went the digital media route, and the first year and a half was great. I was doing really well. I made the mistake of taking all of my digital media classes up front rather than backloading them. Mm-hmm. So I was doing great for those. Was it my second or third year of Duquesne? I think it was my junior year at Duquesne. My best friend, dude by the name of Jeff Mudrick, another Hazelwood kid who also went to Duquesne, he died in his sleep of an asthma attack. And that was like, I mean, him and I were running around together since we were like 11 years old. And so that was a pretty big blow. About a year after he died, my grandpa passed away, who was, I mean, I was just as tight with my grandpa as I was with my dad, the one that owned the bar. Mm-hmm. He passed away about a year after Jeff did. And then like right in that same time frame, I broke up with my girlfriend of like 4 or 5 years. And so I really fell out, like I just fell apart. There's really no other way to put it. I was going out and partying every night, and like literally every night, because I had a really good job in college. I worked in an after school program and got paid like $13-14 an hour, which for a college student is like, I got 25 hours a week making that kind of money. Like I was the guy that had all the money so I used it to go out and party and drink. And it honestly, it wasn't like, I can say this now, like with a lot of reflection, 10 years, 12 years of reflection. It wasn't really the alcohol. I wasn't trying to like run away from feelings or anything. It was just, I lost 3 of the most important people in my life and didn't know how to handle that. And so I would go to the bar and be the life of the party. I'd be the guy that everyone laughed at. I'd be the, the goofball. I'd be the one buying drinks for everyone. And, every time I bought around for everybody else, I would drink one too. And so it became a thing where like, I just quit going to class. And it took me 6 years to get my degree. And, there's funny sides to that. Like there's a class that I had, it was professional development and project management. So this is like, you want to be a professional in life, this is the class that you like. It's required, right? I get into the class. The first day in class, I find out that there's a business casual dress code. I'm like, oh, I was a sweatpants and hoodie guy. I'm not going back to this class. I was Cody. I was too lazy to drop the class. I just quit going. I went to the first class and never went to another class. So my last semester of college, I need 6 credits. I need 1 elective in this class, right? So I go in to my advisor's office with my tail between my legs and look, this is what happened with this class. Shooting you straight, like I need to take this class over. Wouldn't let her schedule me for it. So I go to that professor and I'm like, look, Dr. Voda, I got to take your class over again. I just didn't show up ever. And it was a bad time in my life. And I need to redo this class. And he was like swearing up and down that I don't need to retake the class. So I go back to my advisor. We're looking on my portfolio and, or my grade sheet or whatever. And, she found it and she was like, "Hey, is it JMA for whatever?" I said, "Yeah, why?" And she said, "You have an A in that class." And I just looked at her and was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, it says here you have an A." Like,
Wow.
all right, I'm not asking questions. Just if it's on there,
Yeah,
if it's
no,
on
if
the
it's there,
transcript,
it's
great.
there.
Like great. I don't know. So I always wonder, like, is there some poor kid that like kind of looked like me or something that did everything perfect in that class and like and got a failing grade?
Wow.
So, but that was Duquesne. Like Duquesne was a complete mess. It was, it was a lot. Yeah, it was just, I made a lot of bad life decisions while I was in college. My one uncle always used to joke that they thought that I was the janitor rather than a student because I was always there but never in class.
Yeah.
So, but
Oh man, I'm
but I
thinking.
have the degree, man. I have the degree. I did graduate. It took me 6 years, but I got it. So
It's like you're the opposite of Goodwill Hunting.
Dude, I went from fifth grade valedictorian to one of my best friends, another dude on Twitter. He's on Pirates Twitter a lot. His name's Mike Larko. His wife, him, me, we all started Duquesne at the same time. That's where we met. His wife is a physical therapist for UPMC. They had a big party for her when she got her doctorate, and I didn't go because I was embarrassed because we started Duquesne in 07 together, and she got her doctorate the day I got my bachelor's.
Undergrad.
So I was like, yeah, guys, I'm gonna skip this one out.
Oh man, that's crazy. But hey, that happens. Like I've friends that it takes as long as you want it to take. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
it might not have been how long you wanted it to take, but like I learned towards the end of my college career because I almost had to come back for another semester. I was like, it sucks, but you're gonna do it.
It is what it
And
is.
if anything, it just pushes off the loan payments.
Well, it pushed them off. It collected interest. It made some more. Yeah,
it
was. I'll be paying those ones off until Joe Biden comes through on his promises.
Hey, there we go. But yeah, moving on. I know you told me beforehand that time in college or somewhere in between there is where you met your co-host, Chad Nolan.
Yes.
So give me the rundown.
So,
you guys were
all
playing.
right. So yeah. So Chad and I had a mutual friend who I think it was this guy John was the mutual friend. John was good buddies with me and that dude Jeff who passed away. He's actually the one who introduced me to Jeff. But so Chad's from Homestead, which is right across the river from Hazelwood, and there was already like there's always been kind of like this rivalry between Homestead and Hazelwood. But my buddy John had a bunch of guys that played hockey over in Homestead and in Munhall, and so we played at this. So I don't if you're familiar with the Pittsburgh area. You were from Pittsburgh. You said Beaver County, right? So
yeah, Beaver County.
This might be a little. You ever hear of the restaurant Big Jim's?
I feel like I've heard it. Yeah.
Okay, so it was on Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives and everything. It's kind of like a
little
hole in a wall place, but it's in this like. So there's Hazelwood is like it's kind of hard, but if you're looking at that map, Hazelwood's here and Greenfield is over here, and then there's this little section. It's called the Run, and Big Jim's Big Jim's down the Run. Right behind Big Jim's, there's this really nice hockey court, and it's covered by 376. 376 goes right over the hockey court. Okay. So rain, snow, whatever, we always had a place to play hockey. Exactly. So we started inviting all these dudes from Homestead down to play with us in down to Run. So Chad was one of those guys that was coming down from Homestead. And so the Hazelwood crew that played was like my buddies and me, and then like my dad and my uncle and like all the older guys. We used to play old versus young games. So the cutoff was always like, 25 and under versus, everybody else. And so we had all these old young games. And so these these Homestead and Munhall guys started playing. And Chad was a pretty good hockey player. Like he definitely was a pretty good player for sure. But Chad, and I know this is going to come to a shock to everybody. Come as a shock to everybody. Chad was an instigator. And so I told you about how my dad was the tough guy in the neighborhood. Now at this point in time, he's like, in his early 50s. He's an elder at a church. Like those days are supposed to be like gone past him. And like we would play hockey with the Homestead crew, and my dad would be, there's just one dude. I'm telling you, Ed, if you don't talk to him, I'm gonna end up beating him up. We're gonna end up fighting. And here it was Chad. Yeah. And so I remember having conversations with Chad and laughing because I got the biggest kick out of him, like getting under my dad's skin so much that like he would just be fuming. And that's how Chad and I met, was through playing hockey like that. And then, we got into some leagues together, like Penn Hills deck hockey. And I think we might have played at Brentwood a few times, played in some tournaments over there. But yeah, we met through hockey. And then you kind of lost contact with each other for a while. And he hit me up a couple of years ago during a Penn's Flyer series, saying that he was trying to get back into podcasting and writing and everything. And at the time I had a podcast called Keystone Coast to Coast with a friend of mine from Duquesne, Matt Casnell. And we had him on as a guest, and the chemistry was it was just immediate. Like I could tell, like, wow, man, this is really cool. And so he hit me up a little while later and was like, hey, I really am serious about getting back into this if you want. I wrote like a blog post for him on his 412 sports blog. And we kept like spinning the wheels on it. And then finally with the pandemic, we were like, well, let's just do it. And so he was able to book, our first 4 interviews were Chris Carter from DK Pittsburgh Sports, Jesse Marshall from The Athletic, Bob Pompiani, and Bill Peduto. I'm like calling and telling my family about this, and they're like, what do you mean you're interviewing Bill Peduto? Yeah, I'm interviewing Bill Peduto about the pandemic and its effect on sports, like in my dining room, on my makeshift setup and everything. And so it took off, man. And I'd love to take credit for it, but really, Chad's the guy who, he gets most of the guests. He's the one, I think he's the entertaining one. He's the one that has all the hot takes, and he's not just hot takes though. The dude is so knowledgeable about the game of hockey.
Oh yeah.
He can handle his own when it comes to football. He admittedly is just frustrated with the Pirates, but
who isn't?
He's not, but I hate this, but you get these hot take guys who really don't know anything about sports. And Chad is the complete opposite of that. Anything that he says, he could be abrasive, he could be frustrating to a lot of people, but he has all of the research that he's done to back that up.
Yep.
And so I always joke that I just wind him up and let him go, because when he's got something, man, I know that he's already done the research. He's already got all the homework taken care of. He's already, thought this through. And all right, cool, man. I'll throw the question and then you just run with it, and I'll interject where need be. But it's such an easy show to host when you have somebody like that. It's one thing to always have to rein somebody in or try to steer them back on topic, but when you got a dude that can just when you got a dude, when you have a dude that can just go for hours about ice hockey, about statistics and everything. And I really hope that gets seen as we keep going forward, that he's a knowledgeable dude, and I hope that he starts writing more, because I think that I think he's the type of guy that can really make a career out of this. I don't know that I can. I have fun with it, but I don't know that that'll ever be my thing. But I legitimately can see Chad turning this into a career and doing this full time, writing full time, and that kind of thing. He just has a knack for it,
Yeah, absolutely. Admittedly, I've only listened to your guys' show for a little bit now, and it's listening to it, I feel like I'm listening to professionals on the radio.
I appreciate that.
And it's because one, the technical side, like the editing and all that. You guys do a great job with that. Second off, the chemistry that we just talked about.
Yeah.
It's there. Like, it's apparent, and it's like, it's great.
Mhm.
And the other is just like the way Chad goes in, because
Yeah.
I don't want to say this because I'm not going to say it, but I'm gonna beat around the bush. He has the attitude of someone who a lot of people don't enjoy on the internet, but he
Right.
uses it for the right reasons. You know,
No, but that's right. Like he has that. I don't want to call it shock jock mentality, but he has
Yeah.
that. Like I don't.
He doesn't
I don't
have the
care.
mentality. He doesn't have the
Yeah.
shock jock mentality. He has the shock jock just way about
Aura.
things.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the aura of a But I think no, and I think that's where like the Hazelwood Homestead thing comes in because I mean, my dad and I used to joke about this because we both worked for UPMC for a while, and my dad would always tell me like, look, man, like don't be scared of these like corporate guys. The worst they could do is fire you. Like they're not going to shoot you, they're not going to punch you, they're not going to like. We've been through a lot worse than anything they could dish out with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with Chad and I, it's kind of that him and I have never actually talked about it this way, but I think that it is that mentality to where, all right, it's the internet, what's the worst thing going to happen? Twitter's going to ban me for a week. Someone's going to say something mean. Like someone's going to block me. Like, I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
with that whole, with the whole thing with Pittsburgh Clothing Company and Pens Chronicles or whatever, Penguins Chronicles.
Yeah.
Like I remember like calling him out and like just kind of being so angry with that whole thing because I've never met like Tim and Zach with Pittsburgh Clothing Company in person, but like they've been so good to us. They've helped us with the show. They're friendly. Like they're just genuinely
Absolutely.
good dudes. And so like for me, when you do something like that to someone I care about or that's somebody that I like I take that personal. And so that like calling that dude out, like getting like, what's the worst that's going to happen? He's going to say something mean to me on Twitter. Like, I don't care. And I think Chad has that same mentality. Like he's seen everything he's going to see growing up in Homestead. And so for him to get on a podcast or him to be on the, on the internet or writing blogs or whatever, and for someone to say, oh, I didn't like that. And you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I think that's the least of Chad's worries. You know what I mean? Like he does. And so that gives him the ability to just say, screw it. I'm going to say what I think is right. I'm going to say what I think is truth. And I'm just going to run with it. And whatever happens, happens. And, we just go from there.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we could have had him on tonight. Obviously he had other things that he had to figure out tonight,
Yeah.
but you guys as a pair, it's literally, I feel like I'm back in Pittsburgh listening to, I hope this doesn't come as an offense, but I feel like I'm back in Pittsburgh listening to the Fan. But I'm listening to a show on the Fan that I actually enjoy.
Right. The way him and I try to approach it is like, if we were going to sit down over a couple beers at the bar, what would we talk about? How would it look like? And
Exactly.
and it's the same way with our guests. Like there's certain guests where, yeah, it has to be an interview format because like we just interviewed Bob Grove. I'm not going to shoot the shit with Bob Grove. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to I respect and revere that guy. So like, yeah, it's going to be more of an interview, like let me throw questions at you kind of thing. But like when we have Jesse Marshall on, when we had Chris Carter on, when we like,
even when you had DK on.
Yeah, when DK comes on, like DK's great, man. Like I know he has a bad rap from some people, but DK's such a good dude. Like he's really kind of like he's kind of been a little bit of a mentor to me and Chad. Like just giving us, we'll hit him up in direct messages and like ask him for help. And I can't say enough good things about DK. But yeah, like it's just kind of like, all right, how would it be if we were just like sitting at the bar BSing about this? And if it gets a little heated, sometimes that's great, and if it doesn't, that's great too. But like, I don't want it to be this stale, formal, like, what do you think about the Penguins today? And then hand it over to someone like, I just want it to be like sitting in the living room with my dad BSing about sports, like that's kind of how the vibe is. And so if we can do that and we can get people to feel like they're a part of the conversation and like they're back at home talking to their friends, like that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's, from my standpoint, obviously I told you I don't live in Pittsburgh anymore, and like just listening to you guys and listening to like my big three podcasts right now, this might be breaking news, My big three Pittsburgh podcasts right now are you guys, Helmet Hair, of course. Jordan's awesome. And
Jordan's great.
obviously my guys at Around the 412. Like,
Dude, all right. Around the 412, man. Like, okay, so Jordan and Zach, like this year has been a rough year. I'll get like real serious here for a second. Like, you know, my wife and I moved, and it wasn't under the greatest circumstances, so that was kind of a blow. The pandemic really just wreaked havoc with, she deals with some, mental health issues, and she's not shy about it. It's not something that's a secret or anything, and I really admire how she handles it. But that was a really big thing. We're dealing with some health issues with different stuff, and we had a couple of deaths in the family. And it just, on top of the pandemic, it was, I lost my job with UPMC because of how things ran with the pandemic and the campus ministry. It was no joke. I mean, it was one of the most difficult 12 months of my life, and that goes even with the Duquesne times. There was times where I really did want to throw in the towel, and I get into this podcast with Chad, and it was something to do to just like get my mind off of things, honestly, at first. And then I started meeting like guys like you and Zach and, Jordan and the girls with Yinshers, and like just this community that's out there, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to like downplay any one person or like elevate one person over the other or anything like that. But like Zach and Jordan especially have been so friendly with me and so helpful and so just like willing to be there. And I don't think Jordan would care if I threw this out there, but like a couple weeks ago, I just posted something that I needed some prayer because there was a lot of things going on. And like I'm not joking, within minutes of me posting that on Twitter, I get a DM from Jordan saying, "Hey Eddie, I'm praying for you. If you need anything, let me know." Like that's the kind of people we're talking about here. Like they're great at what they do. Like their podcasts are incredible. Their content is great. And they're knowledgeable. They put the work in. They're funny, but they are just genuinely good people too. And I'm really, if I don't get anything else out of 412 Sports Talk other than just having this new crew of people to hang out with and and be friends with, like that's plenty for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Zach's okay.
Yeah, he's okay. Smitty's all right. He's all right.
No, Smitty and Beefy are my boys, man.
They're good dudes.
I went to high school with Beefy, and then I met Zach, like kind of how you met Chad. It was kind of in that period. Yeah. Like it was kind of high school into college, just from like hanging out with certain people. You meet different people at different bars while you're growing up or whatever. So yeah, it's just those guys, and then meeting Jordan. I didn't even know she like grew up in my backyard.
What's crazy, man, is so Jordan threw out an invite for game 1 of the Penn's Islander series.
Yeah.
Just to a bunch of us. And I was able to go. And so her and I were talking during that. And, just I saw some things she posted on Twitter. I saw like a video that she was in. And I didn't know that she was a worship leader until I saw this video with a mutual friend of ours on Facebook. And I'm like, wait a second. That kind of looks like Jordan on piano and singing.
Yeah.
Like, what's up with that? So I was like, wait, I didn't know you were a musician. She was like, oh yeah, I lead worship for a church out. And I was like, that's cool. I've led worship for 5 years at a church. So, I mean, just they have those, like just having those things in common with people. And it's cool to find those people too,
Yeah, absolutely. Like we've talked before, like this community is just great. Like everybody is there to help each other.
Yeah, that's what it is, man.
And that's
wild.
The biggest thing that has come out of this whole thing is knowing that the world isn't against you. That kind of deal.
Right.
In a year where it felt like we had the world against us.
Right.
We had people that were like, "Hey, we're gonna help you through. Get done whatever you want to do." We just got really deep, but
it's all right. Hey, look, man. Like you said at the beginning, I'm a pastor, so that's my job is to get deep with people.
Exactly.
So it's all good.
But yeah, like I feel like this pandemic. Let's review the pandemic. Let's let's review good stuff. I know you just,
Right.
but like I was able to rekindle my creative itch, and
Yeah.
you were able to do your thing. And
Yeah.
there's been so many other people that I've noticed just through this pandemic. They're like, listen, I got to do something, whether it's, collecting sports cards, collecting sports memorabilia. I did everything under the sun. Some people only chose one thing, and they're better off for it because
Yeah.
I'm now in more debt. But
Well, yeah, man, it's crazy. Like so I took this campus ministry job March 1st of
Mm,
2020. Uh, I
wow.
I gave my boss at UPMC. I emailed him and I called him and I was like, look, man, I didn't dislike my job with UPMC.
Hmm.
There were some issues, but I was working two jobs. I was part time as a worship leader and associate pastor, and then full time with UPMC. And it was just working 65, 70 hours a week is not fun. So I was looking for a way out, and I gave my church in Hazelwood my letter of resignation September of 2019. So I told them, January 5th, 2020 would be my last Sunday. January 2nd, I get a call from at the time, the guy that was the campus pastor for Pitt, saying that he was taking another job with a camp up in out past Connellsville, and I was the first person that he thought of to replace him. I talked to my wife about it, and I thought she'd be the one to like talk me out of it. She was like, "No, that's like perfect for you. You have to go for that." And so it was supposed to be a full-time job, which would let me, quit UPMC and kind of pursue ministry full time. Um, the ministry is completely funded from different churches in the area, so it was basically kind of up to me to keep up the funding or like go after more funding, that sort of thing. Um, so March 1st, I accept, like, was my official first day. Like I accepted the job in February. First day is March 1st. My last day with UPMC was like supposed to be the end of April sometime. The pandemic hits. I start March 1st. I have 1 week with all of my students. They all go on spring break and just don't come back.
Yeah.
So I effectively don't have a job with the campus ministry. All of the churches are starting to freeze their budgets. So thankfully, I didn't lose any funding, but I didn't gain any funding either. And the guy that was doing it before me wasn't taking a full-time salary. So there wasn't a full-time salary there. So I was able to like negotiate with my boss at UPMC to get me basically to keep me until they found my replacement.
Yeah.
So I bought myself like another month and a half there. What the
Sorry if
pandemic
you're
did,
hearing sirens.
no,
I literally live on the busiest street in Hackensack.
So we had to get creative with the campus ministry is basically, what happened, because we couldn't just tell all these churches that are funding this ministry during a pandemic, like, hey, we're not doing anything.
Yeah.
So I actually kept the relationship with my old church up, and we were able to do live stream Sunday services, and we provided them for the college students and the church congregation. But what happened was, like, the first week we do the live service, we just went to the church and tried to like actually do it live.
Yeah.
And it failed miserably. Like, we had internet issues. It was cutting in and out. It was terrible. And I watched my buddy Tom, who's a pastor over in the South Hills. We would affectionately refer to him as the poker pastor. Dude plays Texas Hold'em like it's his second job, and he pastor by day, poker player by night. But I'm looking at his church's Sunday live stream, and it's pristine, like crystal clear. Everything about it is perfect. And I'm like, what did you do?
Yeah, right.
And so like he was like, oh, what? We pre-recorded it, and then we use a streaming service to do like a Facebook Live. It's like, that's genius.
Yeah, that's very smart.
Like, I completely overhauled my old computer to turn it into an editing computer. Like, I just souped it up as much as I could to turn it into an editing computer. Bought a $150 Canon camera, and then started doing all the live streams. And so, I would run into a problem and it'd be like, oh man, I remember this from Duquesne. And then I like have to fix it and try to find a way to do something differently or everything like that. And so the pandemic forced me on a professional level with the church stuff to get back into that creative mindset and to get back into the editing and get back into the video stuff and the audio stuff. And, it snowballed into me, getting back into photography and buying, a good camera and buying some microphones for the podcast and everything. And so yeah, the pandemic sucked, but I think it's one of those things where getting back into what I love to do and what I went to school for wasn't an option. It was a necessity.
Yeah.
And so to what you were saying, yeah, like there's a lot of bad that came from this pandemic, but there's a lot of good too for me, because like I fell back in love with audio video stuff. I fell back in love with photography. I fell back in love with, just so much stuff that like I forgot about, and I got back into it and didn't realize how much I missed it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I feel as cheesy as it sounds, it allowed everyone to kind of remember who they are. It slowed everything down enough to remember, okay, what was your dream? It's like, what did you
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, what did you want to do before everything got so fast paced and you couldn't even think straight? And that's me, like, that's how I saw it specifically, because as I told you, I got a job I couldn't refuse. I was like, it's too good to be true. I took it, and I'm doing it for a year and a half, almost a year and a half. And I'm just like in it. And I'm like, once the pandemic starts, I'm like, this isn't exactly what I wanted to do. Like, it's a great company. I work with great people, but is it fulfilling my creative outlet that I thought it would?
Right.
And it wasn't. So now I do this part-time, and like, I have so many ideas to do whatever. That's what having a job does, is it doesn't let you do all that stuff. So it's like, as long as
and
I
now
can
we've got all this free time.
Yeah. So as long as I can at least do this, then I think I'm on the right path of refinding who I was before everything got so fast.
Sure. And that's the best. I mean, like, that's the cool thing, is when you're able, like you said, things slow down and you're finally able to like think about it. Am I happy? Am I, my quality of life, is it what it should be? Am I finding joy in what I do?
Yeah.
And honestly, these are questions that I ask the college students all the time. Like, why are you in the major? Like, it's funny, like, people think campus ministry is bringing the word to the college kids, as you put it in the intro. I'll be honest with you, dude. It's a lot of just sitting with them through hard times in life.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why I got into this campus ministry was because when I went through that time at Duquesne, the campus pastor who I replaced, his name was Greg Voss, was the guy that was there for me. Like, outside of my dad, my family, like, he was the one that I went to with all those problems. And he's the one who, cared about me and loved me enough to give me some hard truth and tell me when I was being an idiot and tell me when I was, what I needed to hear. And so campus ministry, yeah, there's definitely that, like, that faith element to it, no doubt, and we do have like church services and stuff like that for college students. But I would say 80% of my job is just sitting there with college students when they need to talk to somebody. I mean, I had a kid, his brother was in my wedding. He's a Pitt student now, and he was in the campus ministry, and his dad just passed away of pancreatic cancer, and now his mom has COVID and he has COVID, and so, like, I'm not preaching to him, I'm like, I'm texting him, I'm calling, I'm checking up on him, I'm making sure he's doing okay, I'm showing up at a funeral and crying with them, like, that to me is honestly what ministry is. I mean, not to get all philosophical and scriptural on people, but like, if you really do ever dive into the Bible, especially the first 4 books of the New Testament, the Gospels, and you look at the life of Jesus, he wasn't somebody that was like stuffy. Our pre-show conversation about like that stuffy religious type of person, that wasn't who Jesus was. And honestly, he never preached without meeting felt needs for people. He fed people before he talked to them. And that is, that's what campus ministry is for me. It's just sitting down with the students and letting them know that they have somebody that they can call at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're drunk, and they're scared to talk to their mom or their home church or whoever. That's what campus ministry is. And I would rather be in that and like dealing with that kind of stuff, but also reminding them like, hey, you're in this degree for a reason. Don't lose that. Like, don't like think, okay, well, it's not possible for me to find a career in that. If you would have asked a bunch of people 15, 20 years ago if they thought they'd be YouTubers and podcasters, you know what I mean? Like it didn't exist.
Nope.
So keep that open mind and keep that, keep driving towards what you want and find what makes you happy, find what gives you joy. And I have that conversation with them all the time. And it's just crazy that, I'm 31. I don't know how old you are, but like, sure, you're not too far off from me.
I'm 24.
But even at 24, 31 and 24, we're still having this conversation and relearning that, realizing that like, hey man, like we can do this, there's other ways to do what we love. I mean, my dad went from the railroad to an IT guy at 45. It's never too late to get into what you love. So
absolutely. And I think that's a great spot to wrap this up, but I do have to ask you about one more thing. We discussed this before.
Okay.
We're getting into a workout routine here.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And, it looks like you're trying to make a comeback to the deck hockey scene. Is that what I'm hearing?
So deck hockey and ice hockey.
Okay.
Yeah, we used to play a bunch of pickup at Shenley Park Ice Rink, and I'm really trying to get back to a weight where I can start comfortably ice skating again without killing myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I said, with college, I put on a lot of weight drinking. So, and then I just, I fluctuated a lot, but then I just kind of, you have a desk job. Now I'm working from home, kind of stagnant, the only thing I do is golf right now. And my brother my brother has a master's degree. I think it's in exercise sciences and physical fitness or something like that. But he's also a certified trainer.
Mm-hmm.
Part of his master's degree was he needed to be certified from some organization. And so he has been on me for years. For those of you that know Joe Frick went to high school with us, Frick Nasty on Twitter. And I found some old pictures of Joe and my sister and Joe and my brother, and, was like posting them. And like my brother was, the fat, out of shape, nerdy gamer kid in high school. And then he went from that to being a model for Dick's Sporting Goods. So he's been on me for years to get in shape and to start going to the gym with him. And I have no desire. I don't want to. I enjoy wings and pizza and beer too much. Like that, it's like that kind of thing. And I finally just like recently, like, not that I have any health issues, but like, trying to walk up a par 5, 100 yards to the green, and I'm like sucking wind like I just ran a marathon. I'm 31. It shouldn't be that way,
Yeah.
I coach high school football, and I was trying to out throw the quarterbacks, and like damn near wrenched my shoulder out of its socket. Just like things that like I should still be able to do and I can't.
Yeah.
And so, and I know that like heart problems run in my dad's side of the family. So, I've been the heaviest I've been in my life, and I just got tired of it. And so I told my brother, I was like, hey, listen, after your wedding, I'm going to start going to the gym with you. And like, he got so excited. So he was like, dude, I'll put your diet together and everything, and we'll go and everything. The only thing is like, I got to go before work, and I go home and shower after the gym. So like, we've got to go, like I go at like 5 a.m. So it's like, all right, well, which turned into 4:45 because we had a third person that's joining us now. And so,
is it Chad?
Yeah. So no, it's, it's a kind of a sort of family Hazelwood connection, in a roundabout way. Our cousin's husband, his nephew, I think it is, ended up being my brother's next door neighbor when my brother moved to Plum.
Okay.
completely by chance. Like,
Yeah.
they're and so our cousin's husband, who was in my brother's wedding, and I did my cousin and his wedding. I officiated their wedding. He's like texting my brother, was like, "Hey, did you meet your neighbor yet? Hey, did you meet your neighbor yet? John, why are you so interested in my neighbor?" And then like he saw the floor mat said Cronin on, like their last name on it, and so. But he's the kid that's coming with us. He's a younger dude, but he's trying to get back in shape, and he's not in bad shape. He's just trying to put some muscle on, and so my brother's the one he's been going to. But I've tweeted a picture of it. If you want to see it, I'm sure you can just go through like my pictures on Twitter and find it.
See it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not just a diet. Like it is a complete overhaul of my life. So like I wake up at like 3:45 in the morning. I have breakfast at 4:20, and like everything for my breakfast is laid out on this diet.
I just think it's funny that you I get home from work at 4:25 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and
you're
right.
just getting up.
Dude, it's broken down, and listen, this is a new term for me, and there's probably some people watching this are laughing at me, but like it's broken down by macros. So it's the calories that I take in broken down to proteins, fat, and carbs, like what I need during the day. And like it's just 4:25 it's this, 6 o'clock it's this, 9 or 10 o'clock it's this, 3 p.m. it's this, 6 o'clock it's dinner, and that's it. That's my routine now, and that's it. So for 2 weeks I've been doing that. I'm down about 4.5 pounds. I'm sore as heck, but hopefully in a couple weeks I won't be sore anymore. But yeah, it's when we're done here, I'm going to bed, and I am gonna get ready for the gym at the butt crack of dawn.
There you go. Well, I won't hold you too much longer. I just want to thank you for coming on. I'm glad we got to know you, and everybody gets to know at least one half so far.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk.
Yeah, we definitely got to get Chad on for sure.
I'm gonna talk to Chad as soon as I can and be like, yo, we got to get you on. I need your side of some of these stories. So
yeah.
Everybody please go follow Eddie on Twitter. It's at Eddie_P_412. Also go follow 412 Sports Talk and go subscribe to them. Those links will be in the description of the YouTube video. If you're listening to the podcast, go to YouTube, go subscribe, go like the video, do your thing. Just I'm telling you where to find things so you can't yell at me for it. So
there you go, man.
Once again, Eddie Provident, thank you for coming on Back to the Burgh. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me on, Cody. I appreciate you, man.